Video has been removed by the uploader. Check your encoder settings. Restream key. Come on. Come on. This is such a faff to get going. I mean, who wants to do this? Isn't good television, this first few minutes. What's happening? What is happening? It says we are live. It says it's excellent. I have no charge in my phone. So, I don't know, it's saying 3 megasecond bit rate, but I can't see whether it's working. Oh, there we go. I don't know, it's saying 3 megasecond bit rate, but I can't see. Showing the preview, but it appears to be working on YouTube. So, what are we going to talk about today? This is the third time that I have tried to do this live stream this week. And yesterday, the first time I did it, my microphone wasn't working. And thanks to Jay for pointing out that my microphone wasn't working. Second time I tried to do it, I waffled on for about 20 minutes and then it stopped buffering because, those of you who don't know, is I have a studio set up in a shed in the garden. Well, it's why is that not lit up properly? Anyway, I have a shed in the garden. It's more than a shed, but it's not quite as nice as a summer house. Like, it's not one of those kind of post-COVID, I'm going to work in my garden kind of things. And there's no internet in here, so I have gigabit internet in the house, because of course. But the fact is that is supposed to be more lit. So the way that I fixed this yesterday, and what I used to do was literally run a physical network cable from the upstairs room in the house, and then plug it into the network in here. But what I did yesterday is took an old wireless accessible router and use it as an access point, shove it against the window, duct tape it, and it's now blasting a Wi-Fi signal, which seems to be, it says, producing a good enough bit rate. Why is this still saying this is dropping out? Sorry, I'm going to be fussy about this because I need to make sure this is working. Come on. Producing a good enough bit rate. Why is this still saying this is dropping out? Sorry. I have worked out over the past, so I've got a big announcement coming up, so that hook will keep you listening for another 40 seconds. I worked out that I'm spending half a day a week getting really stressed out about it. I don't need to be spending 1/10 of my week faffing around trying to deal with people trying to sell stuff to me. My inbox has turned into somebody else's marketing channel. My LinkedIn direct messages have turned into somebody else's marketing channel. It's kind of it's awful, actually, and I can't stand it. And I think part of it might be happening is because 2023 has been it's a combination of factors. I think 2023 has just been so hard for people to sell that now so many more people are doing kind of spray and pray outbound marketing, and it's bad because it's difficult to do really well, and to an extent I'm not even sure you can do it well as a concept. So I don't like to do a lot of kind of marketing focused content on my channel because I like to keep it hyper focused on the fractional CTO stuff. You know, I help non-technology people build technology businesses, and at a minimum that requires building out of MVPs and technical products, and it also involves kind of going out there and getting investment, and it also involves, but it does involve selling, sustainable. So we'll waffle on a bit for sales, in terms of sales and marketing. So there's basically two ways that you can do marketing, and I did a short, like a 3-minute video on this, but I can't quite make it work, so I'm just going to do it here and not actually finish that video. Outbound marketing, otherwise known as interruption marketing, is marketing where you are sending your message out of the business, hoping to kind of find people who are at the right. Outbound marketing is interrupting them. So it's basically you're sending them an email, which is interrupting what they're doing. You're sending them a LinkedIn direct message, which is interrupting what they're doing. You're phoning them up. Sorry, just a moment there. Which is interrupting them. Like, yes, or doing advertising, which is interrupting. So that's outbound, is interruption marketing. So you have inbound marketing, which is kind of authority and trust-based marketing, and that is what you have to do with inbound marketing is you go out there into the community that you want to support, and you put a whole load of value out there, and you say, this is my view on the world, and this is how I think, how I've helped people, and this is where people have had success, and this is where people haven't had success, and you give loads and loads of value, and you give loads of kind of free educational content, and there's some sort of subtlety into how you actually translate that. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to attract an audience. And for me, one of the things that I have is I like to look at that as attracting an audience, not building an audience. If I've got something interesting to say, then people are going to join in and enjoy it. Like, for example, if you're listening to this on the podcast in the car, which is my, this want to do that nice 45-minute podcast, me talking on, but actually it's making that journey go a bit quicker. Maybe you're learning something. Maybe you're somebody who might want to work with me in the future, right? So I had yesterday an outbound marketing experience, which is so bad it has inspired me to do something. And this is my big announcement. I am going to be launching. It's always risky saying you're going to do something, because then you have to kind of box this person in the end. And I thought the messages had disappeared. It's always risky to say you're going to do something, because then you actually have to do it. But luckily, if your audience is small enough, they won't remember you've said it, and then you're not really you haven't lost anything. So the outbound experience that I had yesterday was with a person who, looking at their profile, was very new to work generally, and this was their first job, and they'd only been doing it a few months, and they were doing SDR, so a sales development rep. So I get this message in my LinkedIn that said, "Hey Matthew, I wanted to follow up and check again if you would be willing to test out our income-driven framework that helps product teams increase their efficiency and effectiveness during a short user interview call. So want to help, right?" So there's some things about this outbound which are better. Like, it's not a lot of outbound I get is paragraphs and paragraphs of text and who gives a toss. But this one's kind of like, I wanted to follow up and check again if you'd be willing to test our outcome-driven framework that helps product teams increase their efficiency and effectiveness during a short user time call. So want to help. And so want to help is an interesting CTA. It's not quite intentional enough, but it is at least saying, it's light. It's okay. So I wrote back and said, I'm struggling to understand what this product does. Now, first thing, if your outbound is not landing, no one is going to write back to you and say, I'm struggling to understand what the product does, right? Excuse my minion mug. Oh, coffee. Well, it's early because I normally, do these a bit later. So who's going to write back and say I'm struggling to understand what this product does? The answer is nobody. But I did that because, to an extent, I've got so fed up with this outbound. It's kind of, I'm trying to convince people who are outbounding me that outbounding is a stupid tactic and they shouldn't do it. So she writes back and says, right now we're just testing the framework behind the product. Okay, so we're going to get on to that in my list of things. I've thrown it away again. So I throw my notes away, but I found them. She then says, it's basically a strategic framework that helps break down strategic goals into measurable tasks through a hypothesis-driven approach. Right. So, let me say that again. It's basically a strategic framework that helps break down strategic goals into measurable tasks through a hypothesis-driven approach. Those words have no meaning. They are meaningless. And in fact, as the conversation goes on, when she's trying to explain this to me, I'm sort of saying, look, you're saying you have a framework that helps, that when you're doing strategic work, helps you break that strategy down into smaller tasks. Then that's all she's saying it does. Okay, but anyone can intuit that. If you know how to run a business, you know how to form a strategy, and you know how to break that strategy down into tactical steps, right? That's what that work is. There's nothing special about that. And it kind of went on, and I said, look, what's the actual value proposition? And then she says the same thing. It's basically a strategic framework that helps break down strategic goals and measurable tasks through a hypothesis-driven approach. most simply, that's what do we call. And then there's all this pressure to get on the call and get on the call and get on the call. And this is another problem with outbound, is that the only way, the objective is to get the prospect on a call. But those calls, you get ghosted, they get cancelled, they're poorly qualified, etc. Like, some people will go to an opening of an envelope, right? So that's the other side, is that you can find it's quite easy to get people to do those meetings, but these are the kind of people who will just go to the opening of an envelope. Anyway, I'm going to do a merch store. This is my big announcement. It's going to be a merch store because no one in my space is doing that at all. And, you know, those of you who like my content know I'm very opinionated. And it's kind of like, yeah, I want to do some merch. I want to do a t-shirt. I mean, this wasn't actually the first idea, so I'm not necessarily having a go at this individual. One of the things that's going to be initially on this merch store is going to be a t-shirt and a mug that says it's basically a strategic framework that helps break down strategic goals into measurable tasks through a hypothesis-driven approach. You're going to be able to buy a mug with that on. You're going to be able to buy a t-shirt on that on. And anything that you do goes to support me in my mission to help non-technology founders build technology businesses. Whatever. I don't know. I want to do it. It sounds like it's going to be fun. I'm just going to check the stream again. Sorry, I'm just being slightly anxious about it. And whatever. I don't know. Yes, that's fine. Okay, good. So cool. So outbound is bad. Okay. So yeah, it's just and eventually this got so bad that I made kind of like an offhand comment. I will tell you what the comment is, because it's going to sound like I said something bad now. But basically, she keeps pressuring me to a call, and I said, and it was tongue in cheek, to be honest, my own family members can't get me on a call. I do everything with voice notes on WhatsApp. This isn't true, right? I don't even know why I'm justifying this. Of course, I do everything for my family. That's cool. But I have discovered over the past few weeks that something that stops me getting overwhelmed, and I've kind of struggled with burnout in the past, right? So one of the things that really helps me with getting overwhelmed is when people want to kind of have these discussions with me, and I love having discussions with people. What I've discovered works really well is just doing it asynchronously over WhatsApp using voice notes, and it seems to, if it's working for both sides, it's working for both sides. And that's really what I was alluding to there. And then she writes back to me and goes, damn, well, you're fun to be around. If honestly you can't make time for family, I don't want to work with people like that. I have no respect. If you have no respect for family, you probably won't for collaborators either. I only work with people who match my values. Okay. And then that was it. I just invited her to, I wrote back and basically said, look, I don't want to be mean to you because I get this, you're very early in your career. Why don't you just take this exchange to your manager and sort of say what happened here and try and unpack it? Because it's just, I can't imagine, it wasn't satisfying for either party. And it certainly didn't get her objective in that helping people to support her her strategic framework that helps break things down into measurable goals on a hypothesis-driven approach. Anyway, so the thing that actually made me think about doing this merch store was that I kind of have realised that there are certain things which sort of happen in the sort of the startup space that I find so difficult to convince people about, that I feel like I am an old man shouting at traffic, right? So I feel like I'm standing at the side of the road, wearing no shoes, completely out of control beard, yelling at traffic, trying to get them to listen and understand what it is I'm saying. And the thing that is the most old man shouting at traffic that I'm having is this problem of no code and low code MVPs, right? So someone at some point in time decided that they were going to start telling founders that you could build a technology business without building any technology. So I'm going to unpack that. But this to me is completely crazy. And I'm going to wander around this because I've tried to tighten this up into a video, but maybe this is something that I need to kind of discuss more in a live. So I'm not a really big framework kind of guy, but I do have certain kind of rules and hypotheses about how I kind of structure the work that I do. And one of the ones that I think about is that in order to prove product market fit, when you've built when you found product market fit when you have traction, and you can define traction as you're able to issue invoices and with a reasonable expectation that those invoices are going to be paid. So that last clause is kind of like, yeah, you know what, you can just short circuit this and just starting invoicing people, but actually if no one's paying those invoices, you're not really getting anywhere. So there has to be a commercial footing. Somebody has to say to you, the value that you are delivering through your digital products is sufficient that I am happy to be invoiced, and I'm happy to pay those invoices without you having to go to court and get me to pay them. And again, this comes down to another definition that I work with as well, which is that a technology business is anyone in which the primary manner in which value is delivered to the customer is digital in nature. That, in order to do that, you need to have software. So you can only deliver... Jesus, what the hell was that? Sorry, I think that was a squirrel or something falling on the shed roof. It's all quality here. It's all class. So yeah, in order to deliver digital value, you need to have digital products. In order to have a digital product, you need to have software, which basically means you need to build software. So and you can follow that hypothesis through, or that precept through, and go, all technology businesses are software companies. All technology businesses have to build software. Somewhere in this mess of life, somebody has managed to convince early stage founders that they don't need to build software to build a technology business. But you can't invoice without software. You have to build something to invoice. The argument goes is that you can use no code or low code solutions to build an MVP and prove traction. Now, a lot of this comes down to the fact that most startups are taught that you have to, the life cycle goes idea, get some money from friends, family and followers, do some business development, prove the concept of what you're trying to do, and then use that to go and get investment and go and get traction. So, and usually what this means is people are going out there and saying to a number of angel investors, we want to raise 150, 250,000 pounds, and this is our slide deck, these are our financials, and a good angel investor is going to come back and say, we're only going to invest in this if we can see you have traction. And in order to have, because traction proves product market fit, and in order to have traction you need to be raising invoices in my world, and in order to be raising invoices you need to have selling something of value, right? And there is this massive disconnect there. You can't have a no code or a low code MVP. Let me step back and do some more definitions actually. Fine. So part of where I think this problem comes from is that the idea of an MVP is now so old that generationally a lot of new founders who are discovering that they have the money and the domain experience to go out there and start businesses, which normally, like, imagine you're now 35, you're now 40 years old, you've got your 15, 20 years experience in business, you've got some savings, you've got some network, you know what the domain needs to look like, you've got that experience, you're kind of like your entrepreneurial intestines have developed enough in order to digest this concept, right? A lot of those people now are sufficiently young that they grew up with a lean startup methodology as being the normal methodology. So in 2012, a gentleman called Eric Ries wrote this book called The Lean Startup, and the Lean Startup was hugely radical, and it basically defined today how we approach building startup businesses. Where that one of the things that he talks about is an MVP or a minimum viable product, and of course that's kind of, for US audiences, that's really elegant because the term of an MVP or a most valuable player is much more in kind of like the cultural, is much more of a kind of a cultural concept that they have. But in the UK we kind of just learned it as MVP or minimum viable product. A minimal viable product obviously breaks down as minimal in that it needs to do just what it is that you're trying to deliver value on. Viable means that you have to be able to kind of invoice for it, I think, and product means it's a product. prior to 2012, like if you go back to 2002, the problem that you had was that if someone had an idea for starting up a technology business and they had the money to do it, they would just fund a software team to disappear off into the basement with a specification. They would build what they were asked to build, and 6 to 9 months later would emerge blinking into the light with something that was crap, that it basically didn't deliver any value to the customers at all. And there were sort of two problems with it. One is that one was the general approach in that everyone was just going dark and not talking to customers. But the other issue was the fact that as an industry, we weren't good at talking to customers anyway. It was very much us and them. Like, developers knew how to build software, and we would just give it to the users, and we wouldn't really give too much of it. We wouldn't care too much about whether it was useful to them or not. You have to think as well about what software was at this point. Like, all software was used in a commercial setting, nearly. You had a few kind of freaks and geeks who would use, I include myself in that, so I don't think it's too insulting, who would use kind of software, but the market was tiny, right? We hadn't got to that 2007, 2008 Rubicon where Apple released the iPhone and then Android came in afterwards, and now everyone, we have 4 billion people on Earth who spend their whole life glued to a screen, right? And using software every day. We didn't have that. So the lean startup basically said, you lot need to stop building stuff without asking the customer what they want throughout the process. And it wasn't even that radical an idea, right? We had business analysts, we had customer champions, we had agile methodologies, we had all that stuff. But this was kind of how we were starting to build enterprise software. It's kind of like, look, we are, you know what, fine. We do need to talk to the customer more. Okay. And it's kind of, it wasn't even that, I think a lot of it was just that, like, developers don't really like talking to people. Especially not developers of that who were doing that job back at the turn of the century, right? But the lean startup was never about not building software. It was about, I now realise having done this, and I guess that's a value for me from doing these lives, so hopefully it's given some value to you as well. It was about taking the changes in enterprise development culture and then putting it in the startup world and taking those lessons, package them up and saying, this is what tends to be working better now in enterprises delivering software to customers. Why don't you take that forward into your B2B and your B2C offerings? And part of it was, and all of it is really about, all business books have one central idea. That all business books are about 50,000, 70,000 words long. They have one central idea that they kind of, you pound through in the first 35,000 words, and then you spend the rest of it repeating or kind of doing that, and there's this also stuff. But the core idea is the MVP in the lean startup. But it's that viable word that I now realise, again doing this live, that people are getting wrong. So when you have someone who's starting a business now in 2023, they are being encouraged to over-focus on the experimental side. The pendulum has swung the other way. The reason why the lean startup landed and why it resonated and why it has cultural significance is because we weren't woke enough as to why the customer input was important. Now we've swung that thing the other way, and now build a software proposition such that you can invoice for the value that proposition is delivering. Don't understand the subtleties of the nuance that gets you to a point where you have a viable business, right? So no code and low code MVPs, even that has got distorted, because what that is supposed to mean is you use a software development platform that's good at prototyping, right? So you use Power Apps, dragging buttons onto a screen and clicking things and putting the labels and playing with fonts and trying with layouts, right? That is what no code and low code is supposed to be. But even now people are going, I can just do some layouts in Figma, and I can put some stuff in Google Sheets, and I can have a type form that's going through Zapier and updating this Google Sheet, and people are going, that is a technology solution. Where this gets very poor as an offer is that you fall into this problem that market research has. And market research is a very, very difficult discipline, because when you are asking someone who is trying to be helpful to you what it is that they would do, for example, would you like to buy this proper Mars bar, or would you like to buy this little clone of this Mars bar? people won't answer those questions. I don't want to say it authentically, and I don't want to say honestly. There are lots of unconscious biases that you have to work really hard to get out of this. And you, generally speaking, can't ask people what they want. You have to. I guess it's the same idea, kind of like you can only really judge a person by seeing how it is that they behave when no one is watching, right? It's the same idea. If you take a no code or low code MVP and put it in front of a customer and say, would you use this? If they are a human being who is inclined to want to get on with the other human beings and knows how to do and is empathetic and at all gives a toss, they will say yes. It is just, market research is much more difficult than just would you use this. That's the initial part of the disconnect, is that people are saying you need to experiment, you need to test. And the other thing as well with this is not all of this comes from a place where people who are working with clean hands, right? There are people who will... There's a lot of money to be made in software and technology. There always has been. And this blip of 22, 23, where we've seen all these redundancies, we've seen these reductions in value. It's still a very wealthy industry. And if you can find an idea and get in early, there is a fine, from the investor's side, there's sort of a fine balance, right? That you can, if a business is clearly working really well, the price goes up. And if a business is not, and if there is risk in that business because it's not clear as to how well it works, the price will get pressed down. And when you're talking about investment, what I mean by price is, how much equity are you getting back for what you put in? So if you want to put £250,000 angel investment into a business, and you can clearly see that this business is flying, like it is doing really, really well, that they don't really need you, it's just that they would like you and like to work with you and like what you're offering, the price will go down. You might forget 5% for your £250,000. If you've got a business that is really sketchy and that you kind of can see that they've done enough legwork to know that it probably is going to work, which way am I confusing the analogy with which our price is going to go up? You are going to get more equity for your spend, right? So the price is going to go down. So there is a motivation in the investment community not to have you not have as they need to get a point where the traction sufficiently de-risks, but it doesn't drive the price down, doesn't drive the price up. And the more that you are, the more functional you are, the less equity they're going to get for their money. So it's in the investment community's best interest to train founders that they don't need to get as much traction as possible. They need to get a minimum amount of traction to de-risk. You have less traction by definition if you have a no-code or a low-code MVP, because what actually goes on behind the scenes in the customer, and this is what I'm kind of saying about the behind-the-scenes stuff, that when the process of selling software really requires that software to be fantastically easy for the user, right? No one is buying software that the users don't want to use. So it's more true now than it used to be, because in enterprise sales you used to basically be able to make people use stuff, and now it is more subtle. There's more expectation, whatever. So, but realistically, people are not going to... Let me try and unpack this a different way, which is what I did on the stream I had to cancel yesterday. What sort of business do you have to be where you can still raise invoices using an MVP, which is prototypical, or a no-code, low-code MVP. So let's imagine your software that you are giving to the customer is Typeform, mated with Zapier, mated with Google Sheets, mated with HubSpot, mated with, I don't know, MailChimp, right? So let's say, because those components give us enough, we can kind of collect input from the data, we can put it all in one place in a sort of quasi database, we can make some decisions and analyze it with HubSpot, and we can communicate back with the customers with MailChimp, right? So we've got enough pieces there to kind of create a flow. What business can you make where that is all you give them? How can you invoice for that? And the answer is you can't. You can only invoice if you're delivering value. The value has to be, if the software isn't very good, and that software won't be very good, it will be shit. It will be very, very bad software as a concept. You can put it in front of people and they can go, I see your vision, I see what you're going to do. And that lets me want to do all the other due diligence. Do I like you? Do you know what you're doing? Do the financials match up? Have you got enough people? It lets you do that, but it doesn't let you sell. You can't just go into the market and sell that. You are effectively you're dependent on investors with a no-code or low-code MVP. Sorry. What was I saying before the phone call thing? Yeah. So the only business that you can sell, the only type of business you can sell there is one where you're delivering value, not through the software. Like, for example, let's say that you have got this method for doing outreach sales. I'll do that, right? Let's say that you've got this way of building your business so you can do outreach sales, and you have this kind of crappy MVP that goes with it. If people are buying that, they're buying the consultancy method you're doing. They're buying the effort you are putting in to service them as customers. They're not buying the software. That doesn't make you a technology business, because it doesn't fit the definition of the primary manner in which value is delivered. In which value is delivered to the customer is digital in nature. You are working with them as a consultant, and you might be using that platform to kind of that kind of crappy no-code platform. You might be using it to kind of collect information from the customer or from their customers, or kind of push the information out, whatever. So you can't build a self-sustaining business that is able to grow through cash flow without having a proper piece of software. And that is a whole other issue, because then where do you get this proper piece of software from? Because then that ties into my other thing, which is that software agencies do such a tremendously awful job of supporting founders to build their products. Software agencies are not set up to support startup businesses. They are set up to augment existing teams in established businesses. So established businesses versus a non-established business is that an established business has product market fit. You can own, that's, to me, again, I like these definitions, I like these rules. It's, if you're established, you have product market fit. You have no problem communicating your value to clients. You have no problem getting them to pay, getting them to start projects. You have no problem getting them to buy what you do. You have no problem getting them to raise invoices. You are established. You also need an existing technical team. So I've got loads of content on my channels about this if you like this stuff. There are, broadly speaking, 3 types of outsourcers. There are domestic UK outsourcers, and I'm doing this for a UK-centric audience, but this can apply to any Western country. There are domestic outsourcers where the country and the developers are both based within the UK. And there are offshore outsourcers which can either be based near shore, which again in kind of like the UK means Poland and Eastern Europe, or they can be based offshore, which normally means India, but can mean Thailand and the Philippines and stuff like that. So the big problem that you have, and where founders who haven't had the benefit of running software projects before, offshore teams exist solely to augment existing technical teams. but they don't necessarily know that. So they will take your commission to develop a piece of software from scratch. So as a startup where it's just you or two founders, or maybe two founders and a marketing apprentice or whatever, you don't have any technical capability within the business, right? You don't have that technical leadership. You have to outsource it. When you outsource that to within the UK, if you outsource that software development project to the UK, you can normally get away with it because UK-based and other Western-based offshore outsourced software agencies will approach projects in a consultative manner. They will assume that you don't necessarily know what you're doing in a good way, and they will help you do the discovery and the sense checking and all the bits and pieces that goes into actually knowing whether you should be building this piece of software, and they will guide you through the process. When you offshore or outsource to an offshore or nearshore organization, they will just do whatever it is that you build. And that presupposes that you've done all of that presupposes that you've given them a commission and instructions that results in something good. And this is where founders get royally screwed 90% of the time. Like nearly all of the time, it doesn't go well. Because it's incredibly expensive to build an MVP, and it's kind of the sort of thing I want to do a script on. The rest of this afternoon is kind of like trying to break down the prices of what an MVP does, but actually I've got to design some merch for the merch store now, and that sounds like more fantastically expensive to build if you want to build a thing that creates easily. This is part of where the attraction of no code and low code comes from, because you can say for a combination of sweat and maybe £100 a month in software subscriptions and maybe a couple of grand in getting people to support you, you can build your MVP, but you can't, because that doesn't get you a proper product that you can take to market. But an MVP is going to cost you an awful lot of money. So to tie these two things together, this is where the toxicity in this problem kind of comes from. Because if you have a 2002 pre-lean startup mindset, let's say you find £60,000. Let's say it's your life savings, or you remortgage your house, which happens, right? You have an idea. You don't really test it with your customers. You don't validate how it should work. You go and spend £60,000 on an agency in, let's say, we'll just say Poland. They deliver the software and you take it to market and no one wants it. That's the kind of the nightmare scenario that everyone kind of focuses on. Everyone focuses on that part of the problem, that you haven't really designed something that people want to use. To me, that's much less of a problem, because when you know, with experience of running software projects, you can always fix the problem of getting somebody to deliver if you want to spend £60,000 on software, it can be guaranteed that you'll get £60,000 worth of value back at a minimum. Like, absolutely. There is no way that you can, if you know what you're doing, there is no way you can waste money outsourcing software, on the assumption that what you have designed is what the market wants to see. So what's happening today is that where people are talking about no-code and low-code MVPs, what they are really talking about is making sure that the customer wants what you are proposing to build. For example, there's this kind of, I did a short on this, actually did good traffic, did good business, which is there's this humane AI did this pin. So two people from Apple decided, you know what, smartphones shouldn't have a screen. Sorry. Oh God. Yeah, they decided that smartphones shouldn't have a screen and raised $250 million in VC money to build this kind of brooch that you touch and you talk to, and sorry, I can't stop laughing at this because it is so unsympathetic with the way that people use smartphones. It presupposes that, oh, hold on. It presupposes that people don't want to spend their life looking at their phone. Obviously, people want to spend their life looking at their phone. A phone is full of dopamine. Hang on. Come on. Apologies. God, I wish I could edit this. The whole idea presupposes that phones aren't full of dopamine. In a dopamine deficit world, why would we not want to spend hours a day looking at TikTok, or YouTube, or Facebook, or any of it? Why? Anyway, where was I going with this? Sorry, because the interruption, I'm now completely lost. It's the customer validation part is where this argument is happening, because people are basically saying no-code and low-code MVPs allows you to do customer validation, and that's a lie, because nothing can validate the customer. Nothing validates the customer other than being able to raise an invoice. Nothing validates your customer more than seeing the effect it has on your bank balance. It's logging into that app and seeing that the invoice has been paid. That is how you validate a customer. And that is what you need to be getting to as quickly as possible. Now, I get that it's very... no one wants to be in a position where they are spending £60,000 offshoring, outsourcing a software product and getting nothing in return, right? Nobody wants that. But that's not even the risky part. The risky part is that if you are a non-technology person, commissioning, you could have the best, you could have it exactly right? You could have exactly the right specification, exactly the right approach, exactly the right product in your head and on paper, and you could still give it to an agency and you could still end up with nothing, because you need... It is unbelievably, fantastically difficult to buy software and run software projects. It is a specialist skill. You need to be really, really, really good at that very specific thing. And I wonder whether what is actually happening is that people are saying that you don't spend too much money on your initial product, because we want to get you to a point where we can see there's enough traction, because we then want to put a load of money into this business, because we think if we do that, we can fix any problem that you have. Are they running the project? Still trying to work this through. Sorry. So it's kind of, if you are a non-technology, if you don't know how to run a software project, outsourcing a software, commissioning someone to build a piece of software for you for 60,000 quid is going to fail more times than not. It's the chances of you being lucky enough to find, the chance of you being lucky enough to find an agency that will do right by you is really, really slim. That's not saying that all agencies are bad. So I should have made this point earlier. Well, I did try and make this point earlier, actually, I suppose. Software agencies exist to augment existing teams in established businesses. They are not set up to run with small, tiny businesses that are working in experimentation mode, right? They're just not. And that means that they don't know how to do that sort of engagement. And even with clean hands and trying to help you, they will mess it up a lot of the time. But no matter how much I think about this, it doesn't make sense. And I thought I had it then for a minute. But it is almost like, even if you had the perfect product, you still wouldn't necessarily be able to commission the project properly without having someone in the business who knows how to commission and run a software project. You want to spend close, you could easily end up spending 6 figures. You want to spend close to 6 figures on running a software project. You need to know how to run software projects. Like, I wouldn't spend close to 6 figures on a marketing project because I don't know how to do marketing. I do know how to run software projects. I can do that. That's my job. But my job is not to, it's not to run marketing. It's not to run operations. I don't do that. So, yeah. No code and low code MVPs. I want to try and round this off with a bit of a denouement. So you have to, just reminded that Alan Partridge bit where it's kind of like dead air. You and I both know that dead air is a crime. You can't invoice for a solution that is built on a no code and low code solution, even if you were able to land your first post pilot customers and you were still working on that sort of solution. You can't sustain it. You would have to build the real products. You then have to migrate those legacy customers onto that new platform. That in and of itself is not going to be an easy task to do. That's going to be a horrendous task to do, actually thinking about it. Unless the client's really, really simple. Unless the needs are really simple. Anyway, in summary, I don't understand how people are justifying building proper technology businesses using no code and low code solutions. So let's just round it off here by having a look at some of the TikToks that did good business this week. I want to block my notifications. Wow, the ones that done best this week are the Humane IA pin. Like, that is, it's crazy. Like, why would you? Oh, sorry, I'm off again. I had one about pragmatism. It's kind of like, people seem to like that. That kind of like, but again, ironically, that is, a no-code, low-code solution is pragmatic if I'm being devil's advocate about it. It's not a complex, over-engineered solutions. You need to get that balance. But really, it's about building something real in an experimentative way. Technical debt. My technical debt one did good business, but I didn't really explain what technical debt was. I could have done a better job of that. Your software agency, it's not going to tell you, it's not going to dissuade you from commissioning your MVP. So this is kind of an important point in that selling software is really difficult. So if you're trying to find someone who will deliver your outsourced MVP, an outsourced software agency will deliver your MVP, they will prefer to land the project and then work it out once they've got the money. Now, I got a lot of hate on this thing because a lot of people were saying, I don't do that in my business, I don't do that in my business. That's a very Anglo-centric view. There are, if you are very consultative and you're very authentic and you're based in the UK and you have UK developers and you've got a functioning pipeline and you're not struggling to pay your bills, there's a lot of factors there, then absolutely. If a client comes to you and says, I want to build flamethrowers to sell in care homes, right? Like, yeah. You would hope that someone would say, don't do that, it's not a good idea. Most agencies aren't like that. If you go outside of the UK or other Western countries, they will just build whatever you want them to build. That was the problem. In a capitalist society, businesses do not survive if they are convincing customers not to buy from them, right? And that presupposes that that whoever you're dealing with is going to look after you. It just doesn't happen. Those businesses can't survive. Well, that one did really well, but I don't think it's that interesting. Get a product right isn't you getting technology right. We haven't spoken about this directly, but it's kind of like there is a real movement in getting better at product discipline. Now, I think I do know where I land with this one. I think the problem is like if you have a CTO in your business or a fractional CTO with your business, they have to be really good at product. They have to be exceptional at product because you can't really do the rest of the job without being good at product. Back in the day, you used to not care too much about product, but again, this is kind of all this pre-lean startup thing, because being being good at product basically means you're simpatico and you're listening to your customers and you know what they want. And getting product right is possibly more important. Oh, then we're quite a long way down this. That seems months back now. And NDAs, I did that got like, why? NDAs are appalling. Like, why are people asking people to sign NDAs? I'm not a believer in them, and it's just kind of like, I think the reason why I'm saying in the post, and again, it's difficult with these 60-second posts because you can only get one message across. You can't put in these strands. The problem with NDAs is that you can't enforce them. If you are a one-person business or a two-person business and you have no cash in the bank, if someone breaches your NDA, you can't take them to court. You can't get a remedy for that. It's just and it's a pointless thing by thing. So that's all for today. I think I've had fun, even if no one else has had fun and no one's going to watch this. I've got to deal with what I got distracted with midway through that, and I've got to go and design a merch store. So won't that be fun? And I'll see you next time.